Hi, everyone, and welcome to our usual Sunday Talks within the Nine-Sided Circle, which we do just about every week with few exceptions. And yeah, if you joined us before, then you know that this is an open discussion after kind of a teaching. It's open to questions and answers as well if others have them. But also we post this on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch it on the replay if you're not with us live. And if you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like if you enjoy this video or dislike it if you don't. Subscribe if you'd love to see more content. Join us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. You can find us elsewhere. Just search for the Nine-Sided Circle. So, to introduce myself, I'm Noor Kyle. And my co-host is...
That would be me, Mushtaq Ali.
Yep. And this week we are moving into our third part in our 3 Axes of Meditation series. So if you haven't caught our 2 previous sessions, you can watch those again on the replay on YouTube, where we talk about 2 other axes of meditation. And
if you haven't caught them, why wouldn't you want to watch it? This is great. You will not find this information anywhere else that I know of.
And because this is a 3-part series, we are building off of the things that we've discussed in the past 2 episodes. So I invite you to take a look at those. And tonight, we're going to have Mushtaq start us off. What are we talking about tonight?
We are talking about the 3rd axis, or the z-axis if you are into geometry, which is sound and silence. In my original image, and I'm going to pull my original image up here, and it will take a moment. Can you all see that?
Not yet. It's taking its time. There it is.
There it is. Here we go. So our first axis that we talked about here was tight focus versus broad focus. The second axis that we talked about was still versus moving. Tonight we talk about verbal or sound or that sort of thing.
Auditory.
Yeah. This is silent. And this is a very important axis, and it is one that is often overlooked when people talk about meditation. So let me make this go away now that everybody's seen it and you know what we're talking about. And there are a couple of ways to think about this. So the most common idea in the silence axis of meditation is, again, Zen. Because you do not want to be attending or having attention focused on any sounds around you or on any of the contents of your mind, especially the monkey voice that chatters at you all the time. Yes, I have a green bottle.
Invisible ghost bottle.
Invisible ghost bottle full of invisible ghost coffee. So, we all know that, right? We all know how that works. Just in case we don't, take a breath. Sit. Listen for the sounds in your head. You'll notice that when you listen for the sounds in your head, when you listen for that voice, it will oftentimes shut up and hide from you. And so let yourself just attend to that quiet. Just sit and be. If you have a word or 2 go through your mind, let them pass through and do not put any attention on them. You can allow yourself to focus on your breath a little bit, but don't do anything with your breath. Just breathe. listen to the silence in your mind. And when you found this silence, take a breath and let go. And come all the way back to complete outside focus, and focus on me because I'm about to tell you these incredibly interesting things. So did everybody find a moment or two of silence? It's harder than it sounds. How about you, Zainab?
Hello. Yeah, as you just said, it just mind quiets.
Yeah. You can trick yourself into being quiet in your mind. And did everybody else get a sense of this? Okay, that is the most common method of silent meditation. There is another one that is less common, but it's the one that we prefer in our particular method of doing things. And that is listening to the silences between the sounds. That's right, this is part of the void practice, or the yeah, it's part of the whole traditional void practice. So the way you do this is a little bit different than what you just did before. Again, you sit up to where you're straight and comfortable, and you take a breath and let it out. And you'll hear sounds around you, but don't pay attention to them. Pay attention to the silences between the sounds, and there will always be silences. You have to hunt them sometimes. You have to remember it's the silences that make music, just as much as it is the sounds that make music. Without the silences, it's just one long noise. If there are birds around you, you will hear chirping, and in between each chirp, or even within the chirp, you'll hear silences. And you focus on those, and you just let your ears find the silent spaces between the sounds, and let your attention be there. And then take a breath. Sorry, I really enjoy this particular meditative tool, so I get lost in it. I could sit here for the whole hour and just listen to the silence. But take a breath and bring yourself back. Did you notice a difference between this one and the last one? Assuming that you could do this one at all, and sometimes it takes a little work.
What do you think, Soha? What did you notice was different for you, if anything?
I think with the extra direction, my attention was through my ear, as opposed to the first exercise that my attention was quite spatial, because I wasn't really listening. I was sitting in a silent room, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This one was new because my attention was through my ears.
Is there one you found easier than the other?
Yes. I think not necessarily easier. It was easier because I had direction, like Mushtaq was saying, listen.
Interesting. Thank you, Zoha.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second one, a lot of people find that harder than the first. And
The second one harder than the first?
yeah, the second one harder than the first. Especially if there's nobody to talk them through it the first time. Like I said, that one has always been for silence. That's been my absolute favorite. I really lean towards it because it's very close to the way I learned to listen out in the woods, out in the desert. Because if your attention is on silence, every time there's a sound, it impinges on that and it lets you know. If your attention is on the sounds, you miss a bunch.
And you're kind of waiting for it,
Yeah.
as opposed to just being open to
Yeah.
it. Yeah. How about you, Nancy?
I was able to do the first one. The second one, I can see what it is in theory, but I don't think I'm doing it at all. I mean, just when people are talking, there's obviously pauses between the words, but I'm not connecting with the pauses.
Yeah, it takes practice. Anybody else with a thought or a comment?
Omar, how about you?
Get myself unmuted here. Yeah, I guess my experience was actually somewhat similar to Zoha's. Although in the second one, I found myself primarily almost attending Mushtaq's talking and then looking for pauses within that talking stream. Whereas in the first one, of course, it was more just settling into I don't know if it's like a background silence, but a silence like that. The thought just came to me now that I suppose if I did enough of this, there might come a time when there's like almost like a gestalt switch, because at the moment, Mushtaq's voice was the foreground, and I would spot the silences within it. And I wonder if at some point it will flip, and the silences are kind of the foreground, and Mushtaq.
That's what you want. That's exactly what you want.
Mm.
Yeah, Mushtaq and I were talking earlier about flipping back and forth your focus between focusing on the sound itself and then focusing on the silence.
Mm. Mm. And is there like a palpable gestalt switch that happens at some point?
It feels like it to me.
Oh, okay. Because I would expect there to be, and I did not experience that.
Yeah, it takes a minute or two of practice before you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Interesting.
Is the silence on the second meditation like the silence for the first one, just shorter?
Actually, I think that they're very different, to
Okay.
tell you the truth. And at least that's how I experienced them. Because that's all you can really say about it is when I am doing the Zen type silence, I experience that as very different. I'm way more inwardly focused. I am way more reflexive. And in the listening to the silence between the sounds, I am more referential, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more outward in my focus.
I think I relate to that as well. Yeah.
On that, what you call the Zen type, so, what happens to me often is that there's like a second layer of sounds or even voices, you know, which are kind of, they're less strong, but they're kind of, it's like a weaker echo almost.
Yeah, that's what in yoga, in the Yoga Sutras, they call those samskara.
Samskara.
That means subliminal memory traces is my favorite translation of the word. Those are the bits that live just literally subliminally in your consciousness that are always there, that are always talking at you, that you usually don't hear consciously.
Yeah, yeah. And
Those are
those
my-
seem to come out in that first type of meditation,
Yeah.
whereas not so much in the second one. Well, but then I haven't done much of the second one. So.
Yeah, they don't come out as much in the second one. That they actually tend to quiet nicely in the second one, because I think because of some hardwiring that we have from our hunter-gatherer past.
Yeah.
That's purely theoretical on my part, though.
Yeah.
Don't take it as gospel just yet.
I haven't ensconced you in the Gospels yet, but you'll get there.
I'm trying.
Zainab, how about you?
The second one feels like it's more hunting. You want to hunt the silence.
Yes, that's actually a very good way to put it.
So it can be, by practice, turn into very fun and interesting.
Yep. Yeah, so if I were crafting a meditation practice for somebody, if I moved them more towards the movement side of meditation, I would probably choose the second practice to go with it for the silence and sound part. And if it was more sitting, I would choose the first practice in most cases. Not in all, but in most.
I also had an interesting experience yesterday. I was in a ski resort and taking the teleski up and then coming down. So when taking the teleski up, it felt like that silent. And as you come down to the people, it felt, the noises, but they were in the background.
Uh-huh.
There was a practice again and again to get used to that noise without being disturbed.
Cool.
Good stuff. Yeah, I would check in with Mustaqim and Shri, but I think they came in the middle of that second practice, so I'm not sure you guys have been able to follow this far. But we're going to do a couple more because we're going to be talking about sound as well.
Yes.
So you guys aren't being left out, don't worry.
And we're really happy to have you guys here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. All right, so
then we look at the other side of the axis, which is sound. Now, one thing that we know from pretty much all of the different spiritual traditions is that sound is primal. The Yoga Sutras talk about the pranava, the seed sound of the universe, the ultimate vibration. And in the sutras, they say that sound is Om. In the Spanda Karika, spanda means to vibrate or throb or pulse. And it is the ultimate sound. Spanda Karika is another Hindu text. And the spanda is the ultimate creative sound that moves through the creation from pre-eternity to post-eternity. The entirety of creation is strung together on the spanda. In Sufi parlance, you have the shabd. The shabd is like the sound, the music, the joyous shout. And on and on and on. So you can use sound as a focus in meditation to do the same thing as listening to silence. And we start with the simple hearing the vibration. And the easiest way to do that is you just play the sound in your mind. Or you can do it. You can just sit there and go, Om, Or if you're a Sufi, you go who, and it's the same sound because you're trying to approximate what your inner ear hears. And the idea is to find that vibration, which is going on at all times and in all places, everywhere in the universe, and just attend to it. So try this, take a breath, and let yourself hear that sound in your mind's ear. Let yourself hear the Om or the Hu, or however you care to perceive it. And just keep listening to it. If other things pop up, let them be there, let them pass through your mind, and just listen to that sound which is always there, whether you know it or not. Let your attention be on that. You might even begin to feel that sound in your body. If you could feel that sound in your body, where would you feel it? Would you feel it in your third eye? Would you feel it in your heart? Would you feel it in your belly? Or all three? Or any combination? And then take a breath and let the sound go. And bring yourself back to reality here. Not that this is particularly real. How was that?
Nancy, how was that for you?
It was good, and I don't know if I was actually getting sound, but pursuing the sound got me to some physical sensations that seemed to be good. And I don't know if I'll ever hear it as a sound, but it might be a thing worth pursuing regardless.
Yeah.
Cool. Did you feel any specific like sensations?
Slight movement, I guess, but there was some coherence to it.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing, Nancy. How about you, Zohan?
Before we go on,
Yeah.
let me say that there is a very easy way for you to actually hear the sound, and that is to make the sound. Are you laughing at me?
I am. Yep.
I thought so.
Yep.
And I actually highly recommend that. You know, pick the seed sound that you like the most and sing it to yourself. It's only one note, so you cannot sing it wrong. Later on, we can talk about fancier ways to do it if people really get into it, but that is the best way I know of to actually hear the sound, because if you're making the sound, you can listen to yourself making it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about like drumming and such.
Yeah, we're going to get into that shortly.
Yeah, all right.
We're starting with the simple stuff.
Yep.
Mustaqim, what do you think?
Yeah, sorry, I'm late.
okay.
I'm just glad you're here, and I love your background.
Very pretty. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, my office has this meeting every morning now, so I think I will be late every week.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just finished though. It's
Okay.
it's a short meeting. Yeah, about the meditation, I think I'm late with this meeting, so I just try to.
Were you able to find the sound that we were talking about?
Not yet. I was maybe because the earphone, I don't know. It's,
Ah,
but
okay.
I will try. I will try again.
Yeah, for you, I'm going to make it very, very easy for you. All you have to do is sing "Who" to yourself, like a zikr, and just listen to that. Easiest thing in the world.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And is Cherie around somewhere?
She's here, yeah.
She's here.
I'm here. Yes,
Okay.
I did come in late, so apologies there. But same,
We're happy that you're here. Don't worry about it.
yeah. But that the practice of hearing Om and having had a teacher where we did the chant together and letting it resonate. I think that it's a really powerful thing when you make the sound so that you can feel it vibrating through your face. And every time I recall that memory, it just reproduces it all again. And I feel this wash over me through, starting with my head, it's my face, down my throat, down my chest, down my arms, down through my body. And it feels lovely. And I can hear my teacher's voice and I can hear the sound and the sound I made too. So I find because I do the neti pot practice every day, it helps the sinus stay clear. And when you make a sound, you can actually take quite a lot of joy. It's quite a pleasurable thing.
Yeah.
That's how I've always found it. Okay. It's just a delight to hear that. And you can feel that energetic vibration of something bigger than yourself. And it just reminds you of that every time. That's how I connect to it. The easiest way to first initially start is make that sound and go to a room where no one can hear you and you're not embarrassed, because you have to make that sound fulsome and unhindered by any kind of embarrassment with other people going, what are they doing? Because when it comes out of you in a full volume thing, it's like, whoa, that is awesome. But you have to, if you're a bit shy, I recommend go to a private place and do it, and it feels wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Cherie.
So from this simple seed, do we build incredible edifices of sound? So you have mantra. Now, mantra is sound. It's chanted. And there's an important thing about mantra that most people don't tell you, which is you really need to know what you're saying for it to be fully effective. You can make the sounds, you can go around, you know, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, and it's just noise. If you understand what the words mean, that's a different thing. So whether the mantras are Buddhist or Hindu or Sufi, they don't call them mantras, but it's the same thing. They all have meaning. And this is an interesting addition to the sound, is adding meaning to the sound. So if I say Om Namah Shivaya, right? Just I am connecting to the energy of Shiva. Om, the seed sound of the universe, Namah Shivaya, right? And it's like, hey, Shiva, right? Which is why mantras have purpose. Now, Sufi types do what's called zikrs, or dhikr, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Both are proper. And they are like mantras in that anything that you do has meaning. So if I give somebody a zikr, I might say, you know, you would benefit by chanting Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, right? Simple, nice sounds. You just go, Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, right? And it makes a nice drone. But what you're saying is the divine reality is one, unique, unbroken, and self-subsistent. It needs nothing. And so your attention is focused both on the sound and on the meaning. So, which is why I originally called this words, because words have meaning. Or verbal. Verbal has meaning. So you attune to both the meaning and the sound itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And my question is, how, if you're repeating a phrase over and over again, do you hold on to the meaning?
By pure, solid concentration.
Mhm.
By attending to the meaning with every breath. It is a discipline. And you will fail at first. Most people put themselves in a trance when they do this kind of stuff, and they never get out of it. This is why I very rarely give people zikrs as a practice. And when I do, I know that the person will attend to the meaning and not just go into a trance making the noise.
Yeah, I asked that because I have prior experience with saying zikr and just kind of just going off into that trance state. So I think it's important that we touch on that. So thank you.
And then we get to the last bit, or more or less, which is using music as a meditative tool. And this is the case with a lot of different cultures. Sufis call it sama. Sama literally means to listen, to attend to this. And on the forum, I will put up some links to different traditions and how their sacred music is designed to be a meditative tool. I know Sama the best, and I know the Hindu recitations of music fairly good. But you have very precisely choreographed music. But it's interesting, in Eastern tradition, there is not exactly a primacy, but almost a primacy put on improvisation. So I'll be playing my ney in a particular maqam, and I'll be playing the song, right? And there will come a point in playing the song where I will be encouraged by the music to improvise within that. A maqam is like a mode. And there's a point where I can improvise within that mode and create something virtually unique that expresses a spiritual state, ideally, if I am good enough.
This is kind of what we were talking about the other day, Zainab, during our music lesson, how we can use improvisation within a mode to express certain things. So,
and what happens is that the player and the listeners entrain. Do you know that word, entrain? So entrainment is an important thing. If I have two cuckoo clocks, the ones with the little pendulums, right? And the pendulums are swinging I put them on a wall and I start the pendulum swinging, and they're not swinging together. They're like this. Within a matter of moments, they start swinging together like that. This is called entrainment. And the rule is that when two oscillating bodies are near each other in frequency, the weaker oscillation will entrain with the stronger oscillation. Weaker and stronger means that the waves, the oscillating waves on the stronger one are higher and deeper, and the weaker one, they're the same, but they are shallower. So the shallower follows the deeper. This is a secret for why being around certain teachers makes you feel certain ways, because they will entrain with you. Noor has felt this.
Yep.
And probably some of the rest of you have felt this. You're around somebody who's a powerful oscillator, and they pull you into their state. Now, in Sama, the musicians are specially trained, and they are usually very developed beings, ideally. And so when they enter into the state of improvisation, especially, they draw the audience with them. In a certain sense, the standard thing that they play, the melodies that are written out, are tricks to get the audience to start in training with the musician or musicians. And then once the entrainment has started, the taksim brings you upward. And that becomes a form of very deep meditation. And I know that in India, I mean, India has incredible, deep musical traditions. And those guys do this very, very intensely. Same in Iran. You know, I was speaking in the Arabo-Turkic there, but Iran has musical traditions that are 6,000 years old, basically, and they understand how to do this. But it can be very, very powerful. Does that make sense? Has anybody had experiences along these lines?
Yeah, I mean, I find this quite fascinating. I'm assuming you're going to give us some links to.
Yeah, I'm going to give you some links to the actual music so that you can hear it.
I guess in a way, the most outstanding case for me was many years ago. I was able to be in a fairly small room where Ali Akbar Khan, who was kind of Sarod master in India, was playing with Ali Rakhwil on the tabla, and those two guys just, I mean, they moved the whole room with them very, very quickly, and it was an incredible experience, you know.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Qawwali concerts I've been to where you could tell everyone in the audience was having an ecstatic experience. So that's a pretty vivid memory in my mind of something similar.
Yeah, and for me, the most memorable one was back in the 70s. One guy, his name was Ashwin Batish, and he was a sitar player and famous tabla player. Might have been Ali Akbar Khan. Anyway, they had never met. Their fathers had played together back in India. This was in Santa Cruz, and yet they were going to do a concert. And they came. They sat down. They played this incredible music for an hour nonstop, and ended perfectly on the exact note at the exact time. And they got up and left, and they had never practiced. Not once had they ever practiced together. They were just able to entrain with each other that deeply. It was one of the most impressive things I had ever seen. It's like
That's
their
awesome.
fathers did the practicing for them.
So we have a question from Mustaqim, which is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
What is the secret of sound that it seems to have this deep effect on human beings? And is there any bad sound that one should avoid?
The secret of sound is that all things are vibration. I mean, how was the universe created, Mustaqim, according to our tradition? God says, kun, right? He says, be. He speaks the sound. He makes the vibration. This is an idea that is found throughout the world, that the immediate creative force is a sound. And this vibration carries on through all things. You know, it's the dance of the spheres. It is the music of the planets. And the planets and the rotations actually make music. Some guy figured it out several years back and ran it through a synthesizer, just taking the orbits of the planets and figuring out the vibrations and the differences. And it made interesting, delightful music. So vibration is everywhere, in everything, in every molecule of your body is vibrating. Your body vibrates with your breath. And so sound is universal. It's the shabd, it's the universal vibration of creation. And are there bad sounds? I think so. Country and Western music. Some anyway. I can't be too hard on country and Western because there are some people who are very good. But dissonances are not necessarily good for you. So think of the scraping of your fingernails down a chalkboard, right? The sound of bones breaking as you twist a chicken's neck. These are not sounds that are particularly good to listen to. They're part of reality. The dissonance has its own harmony somewhere within it, but it tends to sound like a New Ager. It lowers your vibration.
What about deliberately ugly music?
What about deliberately ugly music?
Well, is there something unhealthy about it?
I don't know, because I don't listen to deliberately ugly music because I find it ugly.
Okay.
I would imagine that there could very well be. But
I've listened to some pretty deliberately ugly music in my day. And I guess what I would say about it from experience is that it can be energizing in such a way that may or may not be beneficial. I think it depends on the context. Like, let's say you're listening to, God, I don't know, I think they called it Screamo at the time, and it's basically like emo punk garage music with the singer screaming lyrics, and that's going to evoke certain responses in your body, in your nervous system, and it's really up to you to decide whether those are beneficial to you or not.
yeah, and then there's also the question of objectively ugly or subjectively ugly.
Of course, yeah.
That's important. Some people will listen to Indonesian gamelan music and find it discordant and cacophonous. I listen to it and I love it. I can listen to good gamelan all day long. I've even learned to like the trompet, which is the most annoying instrument I've ever heard. But in its correct status, it's beautiful.
That's also, I think, a place for something like dissonance as a transitional move
Yes.
within a piece of music. Like one of the most beautiful pieces of music is, from my opinion, is Beethoven's 14th String Quartet, and it has that dissonant part in it, which then resolves into something different, and that
Yeah.
is very, very effective.
Yeah, I would not call Beethoven's quartet ugly, though.
Oh, definitely not ugly,
Between-
but there is a dissonant portion. I mean,
There's
we're talking about
a
dissonance,
difference between dissonance and ugliness, though.
right? And I'm assuming that we're talking about dissonance, or was I mistaken here? We're talking about,
Nancy brought up the question of what about intentionally ugly music?
oh, okay. No, I think I was still responding to Mustafa's point.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong. Dissonance is a way of finding resolution, ideally, and that's Beethoven was a master of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we have. We're going to come back to being able to look at everybody here. And so questions on this. Did I make this clear? Clear as mud, but it covers the ground, I have to say.
Yeah, what do you think, Soha?
I'm curious about trance state. I think I've heard it from Mushtaq before, but yeah, yes, caught me there. What is trance state like?
It is like having your focus narrow down, having your attention being very limited, and often forgetting yourself. Trance state is a special kind of going to sleep. Trance state can be very useful. Nothing wrong with trance state. We use trance states all the time.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned in the past that we're in a trance state. Most of us are in a trance state more often than not.
Yeah, and I can give you an example of the value of a trance state. So we have this storage unit where most of Noor's stuff is tucked away. And when we came in, we had very little time and we kind of just shoved everything in it. And I knew we were going to go back and redo it. So I spent a fair bit of time in a trance state visualizing how everything in there could go together. It was sort of like playing Tetris with boxes and furniture and stuff in my mind until I got it exactly right. And then we went there, emptied the place out, put everything in, and everything fit perfectly, and we ended up with more room in the place than we thought we were going to have, and it was really easy. And that was all done in trance first, and then executed in reality. So I used the trance state to solve that problem.
Can confirm he did an excellent job, and I appreciate his help.
Is that the same kind of trance as where you keep repeating a word and you space out?
No.
There are different kinds of trance
There are
states.
different kinds of trance states, different way to induce trance states.
And
You all want to know what a trance state is like? Put your hand up like this. Now put your attention on your hand. And I want you to not let your hand drop any more quickly than you're willing to let your eyes close. And if you're not willing to let your eyes close, don't let your hand drop. Make sure your elbow is not propped on anything. And just follow your hand down. as quickly or as slowly as you like, but no more quickly than you would like your eyes to close. And if you want, you can fight against it. There is nothing wrong with that. You can resist letting your hand go down. And then you'll notice that your hand is going to get heavy no matter what. So as your hand comes down, allow your eyes to just close. Take your time. That's right, Nora. You can just let everything go down. And then when your hand is down, just notice how that feels. Take all the time you want, or no time at all. And I am perfectly willing for you to let your hand float like that. Letting your hand float is called arm levitation, and it means you're halfway into the deepest trance you can be into. So one way or the other, you get to go into a trance. That's right. And you're actually choosing to do this, which is the interesting thing about it. And you can just sit there for a moment, and then when you're ready, and only when you're ready to feel pretty good and refreshed, you can take a breath and open your eyes. And that's a simple example of a very basic trance. And you notice that nothing weird happened to you. I didn't convince you to send me all of the money in your bank account or anything like that. You just allowed yourself to go a little bit deep. And if I had kept talking, you could get a little bit deeper. And you can come back whenever you're ready. Or you can stay there for as long as you want. It's entirely up to you. That's what a trance state is like. It should feel familiar. Did that feel familiar to you, Nancy?
Being stubborn and thinking it's funny?
Yeah.
Just possibly.
Yeah, but that's your trance state.
It's mine too, Nancy, so you're not alone in that.
When I want to put Kyle in a trance, I pretty much have to trick her into putting herself into a trance by being so ornery that she forces herself into a trance just to spite me.
True facts.
Yep. How was that, Zoha?
I think I could recognize it. I sometimes catch myself coming out of trance.
Yeah, that's usually when we notice.
Yeah.
You know, like you're driving in your car, and all of a sudden you realize that you've been driving for half an hour and you don't even know where you've been, and you're just there. You were driving in trance.
Mm-hmm.
Zainab, what do you think?
Nothing about the trance. I don't know. I might actually ponder a bit and then ask questions.
Okay, ponder away. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for the questions, God, if I had had any sense, I would have been giving you guys subliminal suggestions that you really want to ask lots and lots of questions. I missed my chance. I'll never forgive myself.
So that's, I mean, I don't have to listen to the recording and see if there were any suggestions that you gave. Just
You could, but you know what would happen is if you're listening to the recording and you get to that part, you're going to go into
back in trance. So.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of questions once you're done with this,
Oh, go for it. We're all about the questions.
All right. Well, one is that I'd like to go back to the seed sound that you mentioned. I mean, which is,
Okay.
is rather intriguing. I mean, I was trying to see if I could hear something without myself doing it, but you know that I wasn't sure what the hell was going on there. But I guess my question is this: I mean, since it is something that seems to be universal across lots and lots of cultures, is it the same sound, or does different culture put a different? Does the different cultures hear it differently? Kind of like we have different cultures use different sort of iconic representations of various things. Are there?
Okay, so there's two things that you can think of to answer the question. How do different cultures hear a chicken cluck and a frog croak?
No idea. I mean,
How do you
I
hear
always,
a frog croak in Latvian?
in my experience, the cultures I'm familiar with, it's the same sound. Yeah.
How
But
do you say the sound though?
frog croaking? Actually, I don't know. It's been
Maybe
too
been
long.
too long.
Yeah.
But if you look at different, Zainab, how does a frog croak in Farsi?
Poor. Poor.
Yeah. And how does a duck quack?
But like a crow would be R, R.
Yeah. Mustaqim, in Bahasa, how does a frog croak?
You mean how the sound is? Or?
Yeah, what is the representation of the sound? If you're going to tell your daughter the sound of a frog, what do you say to her?
Well, sounds funny.
Yeah, it always sounds funny. You know, in English, a chicken goes cluck cluck, but in French it goes something totally different. So we all hear the same sound, we all represent it differently, but it's the same sound. And so, you know, in India, you hear Om. In Arabia, in Iran, in Turkey, in Indonesia, you hear Hu.
Is that what we actually hear, or is that how we describe
That's how we describe what we hear, just like we describe what a frog's croaking sounds like differently.
And are you saying then that in India and say United States, that seed sounds the same in both cultures, but we
Yes,
just
but we represent it differently.
Right. So, and our representation doesn't change the way we hear the sounds.
No.
Okay. Okay.
We just come up with a way to call it,
All right.
something that approximates.
Okay.
When I was learning to read Quran, there's a very special way to read it, where at the end lines, you actually drop the sound deep within your throat and produce an overtone, which is close to what the sound sounds like when you hear it.
Nice.
That was a good question, Omar. Did you have any others that were on your mind?
Hopefully, because that was a really good question.
I mean, I do have another question, but that might take us in the field. I mean, what you've given us here in the last two talks is basically 3 dimensions, which sort of, create a 3-dimensional space of different types of meditations, where meditation can fit into any place in that space.
Yeah, or think of it more like different tools or parameters.
Right.
The meditation is one. The tools that you use to tune the person to their meditation are these 3 axes.
Gotcha.
That's the way I think of it. I think of it as tuning somebody.
Gotcha.
So if I give Zoha a meditation, I'm going to look at her and go, what does she need on all 3 axes to find the perfect meditation to tune it to her? And it's going to be different than for Mustaqim and different than for Cherie.
And so I guess my question then is, what is meditation as such? In other words, we can create all these different exercises if you want, but what makes them all meditation? In other words, what's the hallmark of meditation as such?
The hallmark of meditation is the profound connection between the observer and the observed. Sorry about that, folks.
I expand on that, because when you talk about profound connection, describe that connection a bit more?
Let me pull up and read to you what Patanjali says, because he says it better than I do.
Thanks for your patience, everyone. I'm sure
Yes.
it'll be.
Just takes a moment to find the right file and pull it up.
Well, then this is an occasion for Noor or whoever, or to give us a little concert, right? Aren't you guys?
Perhaps in the future, yeah.
Always
I
in
know,
the future, right?
I know. But yeah, you posed some good questions, and I really appreciate how deep we're getting into this subject matter.
And that's a way of avoiding singing. All right, we'll let you get by with it.
Trust me, she knows more ways to avoid singing than is imagined by normal people.
Good thing this is not a normal crowd then, all right? So that's,
Yeah, you are special. Maybe you guys will get a treat at some point, but how's it going, Mushtaq? Are you struggling?
Nope, I am just scrolling through the translation of the Yoga Sutras to the right lines, and I'm almost there.
Ilma, I have a question for you. Why would you do meditation? Why would you do it? What are you doing it for?
okay. I guess let me go back to my earlier question, because that's partly the answer. I mean, when I was trying to think of what do I mean by meditation, in a sense, I mean, to me, it's almost like intentionally attending to something, and then also attending to my attending of it, my awareness of it, you know. And that's the for me so far, which seems like maybe captures most of what I would consider to be meditation. Now, if that's true, then meditation is very much like, I think, what most I would call just being awake, right? I mean, you're intentionally attending to something, and you're aware of your attending, you know. So, in answer to your question, Sherry, you know, why would I do that? I guess simply as a exercise of being awake, you know, being consciously awake. Like, not so much as achieving a particular goal, so much as just being an exercise of being fully awake, you know. So I do have a bone to pick with you, Sherry, but that's a different one.
Really?
Yes, I've been trying to get this damn finger to move in the right way, and my down is driving nuts.
All right, here we go.
All right.
This is found in the third book of the Yoga Sutras, like right in the front. And it starts with the idea of concentration. Concentration locks consciousness in a single area. And then we get into dhyana, which we translate as meditation, and they call it meditative absorption in this translation. In meditative absorption, the entire perceptual flow is aligned with that object. So first, you have to be able to focus your concentration deeply on an object. This goes back to what we first talked about in the very first of these 3 talks of the narrow focus, broad focus. So first you narrow focus down. When you have just the object and nothing else, and that object doesn't need to be physical, then you allow your perception to open back up and just have it aligned with whatever you're observing. And that is what Patanjali describes as meditation. I don't like the word meditation myself. It comes from the Latin, and it means something different than what they talk about in Sufi thought or Hindu thought or Buddhist thought.
So what would you describe as the hallmark of these exercises that fit into this 3-dimensional space that you've now given us here?
It allows you to clean house with the crap that's in your head. Goes back to that. So in order to be awake, you have to stop the chatter. It says in the first lines of the Yoga Sutras, this is the teaching of yoga. Yoga is the ceasing of the twistings and turnings of the cognitive mind. When the mind becomes still, the seer is in its proper place as witness to that which is given, the universe. At all other times, the seer is identified with the objects of seeing. That's yoga in a nutshell. Twisting your legs around your neck is not yoga. Eating nothing but vegetables is not yoga. Yoga is stopping the twistings and turning, the chitta vritti of the cognitive mind, of the day-to-day thinking mind, so that you can experience the witness. Now, meditation is a way to clean house of the crap that is in the chitta vritti, so that you get a pure field of awareness between the witness and that which is witnessed. Say that 3 times twice. I dare you.
I guess, I mean, who am I to argue with Patanjali, but still.
Exactly. Who are you to argue with Patanjali?
But at least I can argue with
You're going to do it anyway.
I guess what I get hung up a little bit is this intentional stopping of whatever the phrase was, the chattering of the mind and so forth. Because I find actually when I intend to do something like that essentially almost glues me into a particular persona, a particular identity. As, you know, I'm going to be the meditator that's going to stop the
In that case, you're
mind.
still caught up in the chitta vritti.
Exactly. You know, and it's almost only when I sort of completely relax and allow the chattering mind to be its.
So where would you put that on which axes?
I guess I would put that in the silent version, right? Because I'm in silent, observing
broad focus,
noise.
and probably closer to still than to moving.
Right.
So you can find that on all 3 axes. There you go. Do that.
Right.
It doesn't matter. There is no right way to do this for everybody. This is what screws everyone up. There is no right way to do this. There is a right way for you to do this. There is a right way for Zoha to do this. There's a right way for Nancy to do this. And those right ways are not the same.
Yep.
And what makes them different? I mean, why does something say fit me that doesn't fit Cherie or Zohar?
Because you're not Cherie, you're not
I
Zohar.
know, but what aspect is it that makes a difference? You know, I mean, I know I'm not
The
Cherie.
difference is that you have two entirely different life experiences. You have different patterning. You have different samskara. You are different people in all respects.
Mm.
So what works for you is not necessarily going to work for them. Sorry.
Okay, so basically it's a question of workability, right? And my life experience has made certain things more workable for me than, say, Cherie's life experience has made workable for her.
Yeah, and this goes back to the whole Enneagram thing. Where do you fixate on the Enneagram? Where does your attention fixate? Your attention is not going to fixate at the same place as anybody else's.
Okay.
I mean, it will in general, but not in specific, because there are too many details that make the arrangement of your ego different than of Noor's ego.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense.
So your meditation has to suit you.
And does it change over time? What works, what doesn't work? I would assume it does, doesn't it?
It probably does.
Yeah.
I think generally it's going to be the same, more or less, but maybe more nuanced. I have never, in the 50 years since I was first introduced to sitting Zazen, I have never learned to like it.
And you're not liking it, makes it not particularly work for you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And you say you particularly like the intervals of silence one, and that one doesn't
And
work.
I like moving. I like my meditation to be moving. So doing Tai Chi or Bagua is a really good meditative state for me, especially if I am doing the void practice at the same time.
Cool.
So I have a question. When it comes to, you know, whether you like a meditation or not, how important is that?
It's moderately important, because if you're repelled by the meditation, you're probably not going to do it.
You're not going to commit to it. Yeah.
Yeah. If I say to you, your meditation is smearing coal tar on your face every day, you're going to say, oh yes, great guru, I will do this. And then you're going to promptly in your mind say, just screw off. Right? So the meditation has to be something that you are willing to experience.
Yep. So that also means that
Also,
just because
let me add an addendum. In all of spirituality, there is no reason to make yourself miserable in your practices.
Yeah.
The idea of making yourself miserable in your practices was invented by some very unhappy person who just didn't get it.
So, you know, in your history, Mushtaq, which is, say 50 years, however long it was, did you ever engage in, or were you asked to engage in practices which you didn't really want to do? And if so, were they beneficial or not?
Very rarely, not by my main teachers, interestingly enough, because they all adhere to this idea of, oh, we're going to make the practice that works for him. And some of them were challenging, but that's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
You know, if I say to you, Ilmar, the meditation that will work for you is laying on a bed of nails. Right?
They're all acupuncture points anyway, right? So
yeah. So a person's meditative practice needs to be crafted for them in such a way that they're willing to do it, so that it allows them to awaken, and so that it works for them. And it has to be pleasant enough that they are willing to continue doing it. And it has to be a little challenging.
Yeah, so they have to be actively doing the
Yeah.
practice and not just getting so comfortable that they enter a trance state and they're not really doing the exercise.
I've got a couple of guesses about what might suit, what might be an appropriate meditation practice for a person. One might be patching their weak points, and another might be expanding their strong points.
Yeah, and depending on the person, either of those could be very valid. With some people, both of them could be very valid. All right. Any more questions?
Actually, I might know of a type of meditation that doesn't fit the system, which is, if I understand it correctly, Jnana Yoga, where you go so deeply into thinking about theology that you snap through.
That's not Jnana Yoga.
I didn't understand it.
Yeah. Jnana means knowledge. They also call that Raja Yoga. And that's closer to what Patanjali taught. Thinking about theology is not yoga.
Okay.
And it's definitely not Jnana.
What sort of knowledge does it involve then?
Knowledge of you.
Ah, okay.
You know, if you read the Yoga Sutras, for instance, that will give you a really good taste of Jnana Yoga. Or you could read the Vijnana Bhairava, and with which there are plenty of translations, and that will give you an idea of what Jnana Yoga is. Vijnana Bhairava is the 113 meditative practices given to Shakti by Shiva, each of which are designed to wake you up. But thinking about theology is just thinking about theology. That's not meditation. That's not yoga.
Okay, then.
Not that I have an opinion about this.
Okay.
So some practices seem to have a somewhat defined intent or goal. I'm thinking, for example, Shiva Shakti, the image of the Shiva Shakti coupling, right? I mean, that's one of the things it seems to do is to kind of bring together the sort of masculine and feminine, but also the formless and the form. I mean, and that seems almost like part
And
of
that's
it.
nice, but that's not meditation.
Okay, what is it then? Why is it not meditation?
What that is a whole different topic of conversation that we don't have time to get into.
Okay, give me the name for the topic so I can bug you about it later.
That would be iconography and image as metaphor.
Yeah, those certain practices actually will get into that image, will focus on that image.
Yeah, and so look at what that is. If I am focusing on an image of Shiva Shakti or Shiva as Nataraj, the Lord of the dance, then I'm doing a narrow focus meditation with a lot of deep visualization. It's going to be still for the most part, and it's going to be silent.
Right. But what I'm suggesting is that in addition to that, it has a certain
Don't add things.
It has a certain intent of an outcome. Yeah.
And the answer is, it has the same intent of outcome as every other intent of outcome for meditation, which is make you awake.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that you glue onto that is excess. Now that is an example, Nancy, of Jnana Yoga. stripping away the excess, stripping away the theology from the thing itself.
So, do we have any final questions? Should we do a little summary of everything we've been discussing in the past 3 weeks, perhaps to close out?
Yeah, give us a summary, Noor.
Okay, so the first week we talked about sitting versus moving meditation.
That was the second week.
Was it? Okay.
First week was broad focus versus narrow focus.
Yes, okay, yes. And in that week, we discussed the idea of having a soft, open focus versus a more narrow, directed focus. And each of those has its value in leading us towards entering a state of awakeness, as well as the second axis, which, like I said, is still versus moving. And that has the same effect along that continuum. There are various exercises we can do that will bolster that sense of awakeness. And so we can add together those two axes thus far and have either, you know, broad focused moving meditations or narrow focused moving meditations, and vice versa for still meditations as well. And then we have our third axis, which we've discussed tonight, which was our auditory versus silent meditation, or if not auditory, verbal, you know, musical, that kind of thing. And this adds a different layer of our ability to reframe the things going on in our mind and quiet them in such a way that we're able to enter this state of awakeness. And that's what we've been building on for the past 3 weeks. This is a model that we have been thinking about for a while now, and we're really glad we've been able to share it with you guys these past 3 weeks. So thank you for joining us for that. Thank you for asking so many great questions to help us flesh this out even more and be able to communicate this more clearly as we go forward. What are your thoughts, Mushtaq?
I think that this has been a fun 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I especially had a lot of fun tonight, so I want to thank everyone for that.
Yeah, good questions tonight.
Yeah. Cool.
Cherie, your thoughts?
Nothing to add. It's all good.
Okay.
People can actually identify the most useful practice and just start.
Yeah.
Don't add anymore. Just do the essential. Just stick with that and then hone your awareness. That's it. It's
Do the finger one.
Yes, we talked about that last week, right?
Yeah.
So if people want to check out what we're talking about, what we're cracking jokes about, you can check out episode
Which is
2
actually
in
a
this
profound
series.
meditative practice, believe it
Yes.
or not.
That Cherie was gracious enough to share with us. Yep.
It's useful for me, and it has helped many people.
Yep. And that is you are so welcome. Thank you. And
Yeah.
that is a moving meditation that falls kind of in the middle of the spectrum because you can do it while sitting.
Yep. And I absolutely love it because at every level, it can challenge you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have tried doing both fingers, or both hands, and moving my thumb on this hand and moving my little finger on this hand. It drives me crazy trying to get that one.
There you go, Cherie. You found him a way to drive himself crazier than he already is.
And it's a short. All right. I think that's it. There's an announcement coming up, but I don't know exactly how we are going to announce it. So I'm not going to announce it, but I'm going to announce that there will be an announcement.
Because that's how we roll around here. Yep. Yeah. So as always, you know, keep in touch with us and we will follow up on that little tidbit in the very near future.
Yeah,
I'm
and
thinking.
within the day or so, we will have fun clips for you to listen to, put up on the forum. Enjoy them. There will be clips from India and Iran and Turkey and Egypt and Native American and all the cool stuff.
Yeah. So that'll be something for us all to look forward to. All right, everyone. I think that wraps it up for this evening. Thank you so much.
Well,
for
in a
being
second,
here.
because
Yeah, go ahead. What do you have next?
we're going to say, we're going to turn the camera off now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with a 1, 2, 3, and goodbye to the people watching